What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I have a really fun video to do with you guys. This is going to be a review slash overview of the Cold Steel Recon 1 XL. As you can see here, this knife barely fits in frame. This is a gigantic knife. If you remember last week, I unboxed 3 Cold Steel knives from my good buddy Boyd McDonald on Instagram. He offered to let me take a look at some Cold Steel knives that were popular and ones that I hadn't quite taken a look at yet, and I said, absolutely. You know, I poke a lot of fun at Cold Steel, and I always, talk about how every time I talk about any lock out, in a light of strength, Cold Steel fans like to jump all over me and remind me that the Triad lock is the strongest locking system that has ever graced the planet. So I like to make jokes like that, but the truth is that I actually didn't like Cold Steel knives until I handled one, and then I realized these are actually made really well, and they actually are utilitarian designs. They take on a very like military tactical look, and then you've got their marketing coupled with how big some of these models are, and it put a sour taste in my mouth until I handled them. So I actually do really like Cold Steel knives, and I'm really happy to take a look at these. Before we get going here, I'm sure some of you might have noticed in yesterday's review or whenever I did the DPX Hest, I'm really short on breath. I've been feeling under the weather, and I run out of breath really quickly, so my usual like fast talking, it's kind of wearing on me a little bit. So I'm until I get over this little micro cold that I've got, you might hear me stopping and like taking deep breaths. So I'm really sorry about that. But anyways, let's go ahead and measure this guy out so you guys can see how big this thing is. It's important to keep in mind there is a regular sized Recon, so a medium sized one. It's actually still pretty big. It's somewhere around here, and then they have a micro that's a smaller size. This big XL size is coming in at a foot. It's a foot long, 12 inches long. From tip to scale, you're looking at 5.5 inches of blade and about 5 1/8 on the cutting edge. This is a big knife. Look, I'll say this right now. This is the type of knife where it doesn't matter who you are. You get this thing out, you hold it in your hand. It's actually this point right here. Like when I saw it here, I was like, wow, it's a big knife. And then I was like, wow. That is a big knife. It's going to make you smile. It just is. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons here. Up against the Ontario Rat 1. Rat 1 coming in a measly 8.6 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall, also dwarfed. How about up against the Benchmade Reptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. And last but not least, and probably at this point, just absolutely pointless, the Spyderco Delica. Spyderco Delica coming in at 7 inches overall. This is a big knife. Humorously enough, it's nowhere near the biggest knife, I think, in Cold Steel's lineup. Don't they make an Espada XL, or do they make a 2XL? Some crazy big knife. In any case, Cold Steel's known for making some overbuilt knives. Now, that's not to say that this folding knife doesn't have its place. I think there are some limited circumstances where this knife would be really, really useful, but let's go ahead and talk about first the action. This is a lockback knife utilizing the Cold Steel Triad lock. Very strong, if not the strongest locking system on the planet. Even when I say that, there's always someone going, no, it's not up for debate. It is the strongest locking. Like I don't, I get it. If you feel compelled to tell me that, that's fine. But I will say that this is arguably the strongest locking system on the planet. It's actually pretty smooth. It's running on phosphor bronze washers. It's not a drop shut blade, but there's no like excess friction. Feels like it locks up, just fine, and it drops into the closed position just fine. I would recommend closing a knife like this with 2 hands, because if there was a knife on the planet that was going to guillotine your fingers, honestly, I think that if your hand was in the wrong place at the wrong time with this, you might lose your fingers. It's not just thrown together. This knife is professionally made. It's professionally sharpened. That's a fully flat ground blade that's not super thick to begin with. I want to say the blade is probably only 145 thousandths. Yeah, it's the same as the PM2, but look how far it has to drop. That thing's getting crazy thin behind the edge. So, anyways, let's go ahead and weigh this guy here real quick. Let me get the scale out. It's just G10 on both sides. The only steel is on the lockback, or the Triad lock. Okay, 7.9 ounces. You know, that's not bad considering how big it is. I have knives that weigh over 8 ounces, and I mean, this thing is way bigger in terms of length than the Praetorian tie, and that thing was like 12 ounces. 7.9 ounces. You know, I mean, you're looking at 8 ounces, and you're looking at 5.5 inches of blade. It's okay. It's the overall size. I mean, this thing in terms of thickness isn't bad. It's how deep it has to get into your pocket. I mean, if I wanted to carry this, I mean, I can tell you I'm wearing regular jeans. I can get this in my pocket, but it's still sticking out like as deep as I can get it in my pocket, it's right there. It could go all the way up to there if my pockets were deep enough, but I mean, I'm wearing regular Lucky Brand jeans. So just normal jeans. They're not like skinny jeans, or they're not like overly baggy jeans. They're just a regular fit jean, right? I'm only getting it up to there. Yeah, I can't sink it deep enough in my pocket. Now, depending on what type of pants you wear, maybe you can. But just to let you guys know, that's the main problem with the carry profile on this, is just how long it is. Not to mention, it's pretty wide. I mean, this way, even versus a knife that a lot of people kind of, take points away from for being a little bit wide, you can see there it's quite a bit wider than a PM2. So that's going to be kind of a problem too. If you can get it in your pocket, you're not getting anything else in there. This does have a DLC coating. Now, here's the problem. We're talking about anatomy on this knife. I don't know if this is an AUS 8 version or a CTS XHP version, and that's a problem. Number one, they don't print it on the blade. And number two, I'm noticing that these guys being discontinued right now are going on eBay anywhere from 180 on the hyper low end. But the mass majority of them are selling for about $250 on eBay. Now, they're all being advertised as CTS XHP, but somebody who owns one of these, and somebody who's wanting to buy one, if it's not printed on the blade, I'm hoping that the XHP models have CTS XHP listed on the blade. Because if they're not, it's going to be really hard to tell the difference between an AUS 8 version and a CTS XHP version. And somebody who's going to pay $250, number one, you're already overpaying in my opinion. But if you're going to pay that much money for an AUS 8 version, you're definitely overpaying. Just a fair warning to people who watch this review and go, I want one, and then they rush out and they're like, oh, it's discontinued, I'll look on eBay. Oh crap, they're $250, $270. Well, I'll go ahead and buy it. Find a way to clarify what steel it is, because it's not printed on the blade. Like I said, if the CTS XHP is printed on these blades and you really want to spend that much money, then great, problem solved. But just make sure you know. It does have some sort of coating on it. I don't know what type of coating it is. It's fairly reflective. I know some of the older coatings that Cold Steel was using, were kind of notorious for flaking off, but they hold up okay. If it's one of the newer coatings, like whatever they're putting on the American Lawman, I can tell you, I mean, I've shown that knife on my channel here recently after it's been used pretty hard, and it's holding up pretty well. So it's really hard for me to tell exactly, which version of the coating this is, whether it's newer or older. But in terms of how it looks nice. We've got a clip point, very classic clip point style blade. Kind of gives this a Bowie look, definitely in look and feel. It is nice. The blade is nice and symmetrical. I mean, this was obviously professionally done. The blade is sharpened symmetrically. It's also, I don't believe that this has ever been used by Mr. McDonald. It feels to be in basically brand new condition. You can see there, it just says Cold Steel, Taiwan, which, by the way, this is made in Taiwan. Cold Steel knives are not made in the USA. And then it says Recon 1. The blade is gigantic, but I'll tell you this. In a situation where you needed to carry a large knife that could do a lot of stuff, but you didn't want it hanging off your side like a large fixed blade or a machete, this knife would actually serve pretty well. I mean, if I was going to go camping and I had to hike a ways through a lot of brush to get to a point where I had to do a whole bunch of work before I set up camp, this might be an okay knife. I mean, in terms of carry profile, it's going to be thin versus other large bladed objects in the same caliber. In terms of how the blade is done, it's a large, fully flat ground clip point blade, which means it's going to be really good at a lot of stuff. It gets really thin behind the edge. Honestly, given all the different handle positions that I could hold this knife in, I could use this as a machete. You probably could use it to baton some wood. I mean, you wouldn't want to go crazy with it, but you could do that. It would also be something that you could use to kind of get kindling or create kindling, or I imagine it would be a decent skinning knife. I don't know a lot about skinning, deer or anything like that. I would imagine it would do that. This is definitely an outdoor knife. There are going to be situations where a fixed blade is simply going to be a better option, but in that very specific situation where you need to carry something that you can fold up and that's not hanging off of your side, that needs to do a whole bunch of different things, that length of blade in a folding knife might be fairly useful. I mean, you have these large thumb studs actually do allow you to deploy this knife. You have to kind of give it some wrist, but you can deploy it with one hand, and you can deploy it pretty easily. You can also push this and release the blade. I do not recommend that. That's a good way to lose your fingers, definitely. Anyways, we'll talk more about the ideas there behind what you could use it for here in a sec. Moving down to the scales, these are solid, peel ply textured or knurled textured G10 scales. You've got a simple Torx head pivot. You've got little teeny tiny body screws. I don't know why they use little tiny body screws on this thing. You can see they're the same size as the Delica. That's fine though. What are you going to do? You can mount the pocket clip for left-handed carry. This is a truly ambidextrous knife with it being a lockback, so that's nice. And it also comes with the left-hand carry clip in the box. Moving to the other side, you've got the pocket clip, you've got the female side of the pivot, and everything else is exactly the same. Ergonomically, this knife literally has 1, 2, 3, 4 full positions that you can put your hand in. There is a lot of room on that knife, making it a knife that's versatile, in terms of chopping, your slashing, or sort of machete tasks. You've got plenty of room to choke up on the blade if you kind of need to do some life, you're doing some wood carving, or you're trying to make little wood curls for like fire kindling or whatever. Yeah, I mean, the handle positions, I mean, the handle's huge and kind of looks ridiculous, but it's not like they weren't thinking about where people might put their hands. No, it's very comfortable. This is a very ergonomic knife. I mean, I would appreciate a knife like this if I was camping. I honestly would. I mean, you can do a lot of different things with something like this. Let me be clear, though. This isn't an EDC knife. I mean, there are definitely going to be people watching this who probably EDC this, and I would hope that a lot of you are like, yeah, we know, but it's fun to carry it. Like, if that's your thought process, then hey, I get it. If you're carrying this knife every day for EDC and you're like, yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's fun to carry, I'm totally with you. I do stuff like that all the time. I have lots of knives that don't make any sense for EDC, but I carry them because they make me happy. If you are kidding yourself into thinking that this is a good EDC knife and you're just like a regular guy just jamming this knife into a pair of khakis or a pair of jeans and you're going and working in an office, no, that doesn't make any sense. Camp knife, outdoor knife, work knife, yeah, I honestly do see it. I think this is about as big as a folding knife can get before you start to have diminishing returns in what it can do versus other tools. Like I said, I get this for a lot of outdoor stuff, but I think you're limited there. Now, on this box, there is a price tag, and I would imagine this price tag came from a time period when they were still available, of $117.99. It's made in Taiwan. If this were AUS 8, this big of a knife, it's close. Whenever I think AUS 8, it's just not a super high quality steel, and just because it's big doesn't justify the price being higher. Maybe an $80 knife. If you could get this knife in CTS XHP for around that price, maybe up as high as $130, yeah, it's totally worth it. I mean, I like to look at knives in an EDC sense, but I am forced to look at knives in the light that they were designed. Like if a knife was designed as an outdoor hard use knife, it doesn't make any sense for me to go, it's a bad knife because it doesn't work for EDC. No, I mean, this is clearly an outdoor work knife. I'm going to review it that way. So at a price point of $117, it feels a little high for AUS 8. If it were CTS XHP, great deal, all the way up to about $130, maybe $140, given that it's made in Taiwan. I think that's excellent. The problem is that this knife is discontinued, this XL version, and what I'm seeing online is $175, $180 at least. It's way overpriced, either for AUS 8 or CTS XHP, and definitely these really high prices of like $250 to $200. I saw one for $280. $280? No. Definitely not. So beware of that. And again, beware, you know, these, if this is AS 8 or CTS XHP, I don't know because it's not on the blade. I should have asked him beforehand, but I didn't see it anywhere. So that's something. I mean, if you're like, I just want one because it's cool, and you're gonna go buy one, then be careful about that, because I don't know. I don't know if the CTS XHP version is printed on the blade. I do think this is very well made. It's a very, I mean, Cold Steel is definitely not kind of like the goofy over-the-top company that I once thought they were. I mean, they are definitely making quality tools. Yeah, some of these might be a bit big and a bit crazy, but they're still purpose-built. You know, this is still a good knife. You know, while this isn't going to be a knife that I can like readily recommend to people, it's not going to go on my most recommended playlist. I want to be clear. I am acknowledging that the locking system is definitely a strong locking mechanism for a folding knife, perhaps the strongest of all time. I'm also acknowledging they clearly know how to grind a functional blade, and they do a great job with ergonomics. Cold Steel does an amazing job with ergonomics, and those are all respectable traits for folding knives. So, you know, I'll give them that. I'll tell you what, if it were going to be me and I was going to go after a Recon, I've never handled it, but the normal sized one or the small one is probably what I would go with. This is an awesome design in a smaller knife. Honestly, give me this exact design and give me like this size. Here we go, right here. See if I'm guessing right. Almost. There's the Benchmade Griptilian. Give me this design in a Benchmade Griptilian size knife, and we've got a winner. But in this size, I just can't do it. If I'm going camping all the time, maybe I'd consider it. You know, maybe this would be a really, really good camp knife. But for EDC, no, I can't do it. In any case, though, this did put a big smile on my face. It is really fun to sit around and just sort of play with. It is a little bit dangerous. I have to be very cognizant when I'm opening and closing it because I am worried I might lose a finger, but still a very entertaining knife in any sense. By the way, it is almost perfectly centered, and there's no blade play, of course. I've never had blade play on a triad lock. No blade play up, down, left, or right. So really good build quality. But anyways, guys, that's going to be pretty much it for today's review. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to take a look at my other videos, I do, of course, have lots of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, then please subscribe to my channel because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.